Hello, everybody, and welcome to Meten and Gary's financial review. Um, Today, we're going to be doing something different. Actually, Meten, introduce yourself first.
Uh, this is Matan here of Plutonic Planes, and today we're going to go over Gary's doing the introduction. Go ahead, Gary.
Um, so, and I'm Alternative Interactions, by the way, but you probably knew that anyway, because it says it in big letters down there. Um, Today's a financial review show, and what we mean by that is that we've done a few prediction programs now, September, October. We may probably even done one in August. I can't remember now. We've done quite a few. We've been quite busy, and I've been getting a few emails and a few messages saying it's all very good you doing this prediction stuff or what could be coming, but we're not really seeing anything. And I agree that in the mainstream press, you are not seeing anything because they don't want you to know. So what myself and Maten have done is looked. I've been taking a note of things that have been going on, and I've put together a list that we'll go through of some of the key points of what we're seeing happening. And so what we're talking about is fundamentally a snowball at the top of a mountain. And as this time, so the slope is time, and as this snowball rolls down this mountain, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where certain things can't be stopped. And the we're going to try today to show you how this snowball is getting bigger and bigger and bigger in what we're seeing. So, anything else that you've got to add before we get into it, then, Miten?
No, that was brilliant, Gary. Let's do it.
Thank you. So, the first one on the list is good old Argentina. And Miten and I did a program, and we said around the 22nd, 23rd September, um, new moon from memory, we were going to see something fairly large happen. You know, we were going to start seeing something in the collective. And what we actually saw was Argentina collapse. And I would say that's pretty darn big when a country fundamentally goes broke. Um, Now the US rallied and into support of the country, initially offering billions and billions, and then pulling back a bit on that one because they realised what a black hole there was there. But something that did happen was the president Millet was personally supported by Donald Trump to the tune of between 20 and 40 billion dollars. And he did this to maintain stability within Argentina, but also because I should imagine of the minerals, location, and the need to maintain some sort of support in South America. Because whatever Donald's saying at the moment, Donald is not really very well supported. And as we go through the list, you'll start to see um, the kind of dodgy situation that America's in at the moment, in many ways. Now, it's very interesting that, how can we put this? The opposition leader, 3 days after Millet was given, 20 to 40 billion to maintain his presidency, the opposition leader just dropped down dead with a heart attack. Very handy, wasn't it, for the election? Okay. Now, the one thing that probably many people have missed, though, is that even though Argentina collapsed, the farmers had just sold huge amounts of soybean to China. American farmers, who normally sell the soybean to China, didn't because Mr. Trump upset China with the tariffs and China went elsewhere. And so American farmers have got silos full of soybeans that they can't sell because Argentina's already undercut them. And yet Trump is supporting that country. Trump has also done a deal with Argentinian beef that will be flowing into America cheap Argentinian beef. But what about the domestic beef? So I do understand that some subsidies have been paid to American farmers, even though um, the federal government is shut down. And I think that was his hand was forced on that one because if he didn't, then fundamentally America's going to lose their farming, and they've still sat on a lot of money's worth of soybeans that they can't sell to anybody. So the Argentinian thing, although at first glance looks as if it's kind of when you start looking at it in a financial sense and the implications from what's gone on, was it really a good deal for America in the short term? Probably not. So that's the first one that I wanted to point out. We got, we actually got something completely right. We couldn't foresee what it would be, obviously not, but we did see something big happening, and that's the first bit of the snowball on the top of the mountain starting to go down. So, with that, Maten, what are your thoughts? In what you see or chart wise, so you can remember.
So just a reminder. So during September, we had two eclipses. We had the eclipse of September 7th, which was about 14 degrees Pisces. And then we had the eclipse of September 21st, 29th, which was about, tw no, sorry, September 21st, 22nd, which is about 28, 29 degrees Virgo. And so it's Mercury and Jupiter ruling those two eclipses. And an eclipse is a moment where the life force energy of the sun is blocked out. So it's when everything is hidden and a plot is incepted. Like there's a plot that occurs and no one can see what it is and how it will manifest in the world until later on. With Argentina, it was right away. It was a couple of days later, I think, for September
Yeah,
23rd. And it's fascinating because these are plans, these are plans and plots that need to occur as steps towards February and March of next year. And I say that because, as I've been saying on my channel and in collaboration with Gary, is that we're all moving towards the completion of this Aries vanishing point or the Aries vortex. And what that means is a new vision is being formed and a new practical vision is being set up. But in order for that to happen, there's a lot of things that have to be destroyed and transmuted by Pluto. And so these eclipses are like kind of mini shockwaves that are being sent out to destroy what no longer is valid or works economically and technologically. And so all that's being reset through the parameters of the Aries vortex in combination and collaboration with Uranus bringing in new tech and Pluto and Aquarius destroying old tech. And right now, at this particular time, we're having, and we'll get into that in the next video, but we're having a little reset as well. But it's not we'll go over that later in a little on number 8 in this one. But that's what I see. And the eclipse will have more fallout effects uh, as we move through the months. So the next huge one will be around, let's see, it'll be square to the eclipse. So square to September will be Sag. So that'll be November, the end. So it'll be December. It'll be mid to end of December. Although we have some stuff this month, of course, too, with the new moon. So I'll leave it at that for now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Brilliant, brilliant. So the second one, which I think is really worth raising, is what happened, and I can't really remember. I know this was would have been kind of in that show again, the Argentina one, because I think it was Octoberish, but I can't remember. Was in the Netherlands actually seized a Chinese ship that was connected to the chip maker Nexperia, and this has caused huge ripple effects. Can you remember when that was roughly? Return from
Yeah, that was around October. I think it was October 4th.
Fourth. Thank you. Thank you. So that so the beginning of October, we've had this event transpire, and the Netherlands, Dutch authorities have seized a ship, Chinese ship. I think from memory, because of national security, because of the parent company of Nexperia. But Nexperia is who makes chips for cars, as in computer chips. We're talking not chips we fry or eat in bags. And what we're now seeing some weeks later, I mean, we're beginning of November now, first week of November, and we're seeing this, and I'm not exactly sure when it's going to happen. If there's been some kind of deal done or what, but last week we were seeing reports that Volvo and VW factories in Germany only had a few weeks or a week's worth of chips left before production in their plants would have to stop. So all car production for VW and Volvo would stop. Now, this shows just how fragile Europe's supply chain is and how the seizure of one ship and the non-compliance of China or a Chinese company to no longer supply chips until that ship is released is fundamentally likely, if somebody doesn't budge, and I don't know if what deals are going on in the background at the moment over this, who knows? Um, but it could potentially shut down the last big industrial unit that Germany has. Germany's already in recession. Germany's already struggling. Germany has lost, I think in 1 month, last month, they lost 126,000 engineering jobs. It's huge. Germany is the powerhouse of Europe. It's the beating heart of Europe in production manufacturing, and it's on its knees. And another country's um, seizing of a ship could potentially bring the entirety of Europe to its knees and create a complete collapse of the EU. And that's how serious this is. Now, this isn't going to happen overnight. Remember, we've got the snowball, and the snowball's gaining a bit of momentum. But this is all part of what we're seeing. So when you were saying, oh, we're not seeing anything in the financial, when the GDP of a country is being severely affected and tested just because they can't get hold of one small item, it shows you how fragile the entire system of Europe, manufacturing and the supply chain really is. So there we go. Have you got anything to add to that, Vitem?
Why was that ship seized? Why would they seize a ship by China?
Because the parent company of Nexperia, who's a chip maker or something, was involved in potentially spying or producing probably chips for Russia or whoever else, and they were unhappy about the their sovereignty and their security, I believe.
Okay, thanks for
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So that they've secured their sovereignty by potentially shutting down Europe's manufacturing centre to create a financial crash for themselves. So they've done very well with that one.
All right, number three.
um, Number three. This is going back to the USA, and we're going to be talking about, in this case, the car subprime auto leasing, lending, and parts. Now, I can't quite remember when we did this. I think this was in the September show, Pretty sure it was September show. Could have been October. No, it might have been October actually. I can't remember. Anyway, what we had, and I reported on this, was that we had two major companies in the USA collapse in the car subprime lending and parts sector, and that was Tricolor and First Brands. 3 or 4 weeks later, we've had a third one collapse in the same market, which is Prima Lending Capital Partners or Lending Capital Partners. So we have had three major auto leasing, lending, second-hand car loaning companies collapse within a month of each other fundamentally. And we're not talking about small potatoes here. There could be up to 80 billion worth of subprime loans and contagion amongst all the multiple reselling of debt upon debt upon debt, which is how our fiat system works. Was one major bank in America called Jeffries that could be 3 to 10 billion in the hole for the first two, which is Tricolor or First Brands, one or the other. I think it was First Brands. But I wanted to bring this up, not so much of what the collapse could potentially mean, but just to demonstrate how the contagion goes everywhere. So it was reported just shortly after the third company collapsed that Barclays Bank in the UK, for either Tricolor or First Brands, was £110 million loss from debt it held via them directly. And that's not including subprime, that's a direct loss from loans that they had secured directly to these companies or one of these companies. So it just shows that if one bank in the United Kingdom can be 110 million, I'm guessing that most of the banks in the United Kingdom will have multiple millions worth of exposure to this financial system. And I would suggest and make a guess that most of the banks in America also have contagion or are connected to and will lose multiple millions of dollars connected to these three companies' collapse. Now, Maten spoke to me today. We're having a general chat, obviously, before we started. And I said, America's in trouble from what I can see. Things are really struggling. And Maten spoke to me about how they were living on credit. So would you like to express to the audience who aren't in America just how people are living off credit currently because they can't afford to live? And it's like, do you pay your car loan? Do you pay your rent? Or do you eat? So,
Yeah, it's all as you said. It's like a decision, like a lot of, I mean, those who have been successful, quote unquote, in purchasing property, for example, they may have property, but do they have a job that's giving them, enough money to, pay the bills, or do they have a job? And are they having consistent income? Because you still have to pay the sales tax, for property in the United States. And if you don't pay the sales tax, then you don't own the property somehow, right? Because really, no one owns much if you don't pay the sales, the local taxes. So, especially the price of imports, the price of food, the price of even local beef, all that is like very high right now. And people are having to, consider buying less, I don't know, not the grass-fed meat they're used to or something, or, buy cheaper or buy different types. People are having to renegotiate how they shop, how they get their food because the prices are really high, and it's really affecting everyone. And restaurants have doubled in the last 2, 3 years, the prices for a meal. And this is like, half of it's subpar quality food, and they're still doubling and tripling their prices at local restaurants. And, but there's also really good quality food too. So it's very strange. It's like if you go out and you want to buy food and you're going to pay a lot of money, it's like you'd rather spend it at a nice restaurant with quality food because all the restaurants are charging astronomical prices, and they have to just to stay afloat, just to stay afloat. And the debt is everywhere. Everyone has debt that they're dealing with, it seems, on some level. And, if not, then they're doing well. But yeah, that's what it is right now. So the crash has already happened.
Yeah,
The reset has already happened. We're just everything is just slowly coming into place as to what that looks like on a country, or not even country, but on a worldwide basis. What that looks like for groups of countries and their plans for dealing with their own debt, because they're doing the same thing. I mean, what we have the 37 trillion debt. That's like that's like all of us are holding that up. So we'll talk when we get to 8 about how what those plans, those
yeah,
Aries vortex plans are in effect
yeah.
that
Point eight's
culminate
very
there.
interesting. Yeah, yeah. Now, something else that is exacerbating what we've just been talking about is the federal government shutdown and the fact that the food stamps and the availability to food and everything else is being denied by to thousands. I think it's 45 million Americans are struggling now. And I think the federal government shutdown is costing between 15 and 30 billion per week. Now, I'm not sure if that's correct, but big
What
numbers
do you mean?
either.
What do you mean the shutdown is causing what?
15 billion per week. It's costing people, companies, because you think if a company supplies a federal company government and that federal government's now shut down, they're not paying their bills. They can't order extra parts or bits and pieces. And so fundamentally, your biggest customer, which is the federal government, is no longer a customer. People are being put in furlough, we're hearing in the UK. So Americans who work for the federal government have been put on furlough, but they're not guaranteed that they're going to get paid when this all stops. And even if they'll have a job when and if it does stop. And so this has to be having a huge effect on, and as to why we're seeing the subprime auto leasing side of the financial system collapsing because it's very easy to live without a car. So you're obviously in America. What are your thoughts on that? What are you seeing, Maten?
I see birds and trees and and let's see, some rain. Yesterday was some rain, and today the sun's coming out. That's really nice. Um, but the day before was really windy and gray, and the
Yeah,
day before was very rainy. And this is fascinating to me because this whole month, and we'll go over it next video, but this whole month is like a barrage of waves every day. Every day something different occurs. Some new shock occurs. And today's November 7th, and we've had the shutdown since, let's see, I think today is the 38th day of the shutdown.
yeah,
So we've had it for over a month now, and this is record. The last shutdown, I think, was 2013 in October as well. And that was, I think, maybe 19 days or something, or went up to some 20 something. And it could very well be today that it stopped. I know they're having some talks today to see if they can end it today. So it could very well end today. If it ended today, that would make sense because that would be on board with just, I mean, every day there's a huge transition. Yesterday, Venus went into Scorpio, ingressed into Scorpio. Today, I don't even have my astro notes until the next video. So,
yeah,
um, but every day something's occurring. I think today is when Uranus goes retrograde back into Taurus. So we're like going into a portal. a time portal into the past these next couple months because all these planets are going retrograde and we're looking to see, okay, what's really working, what's not. And so that's why we're seeing all the like, okay, we better be cautious. Okay, we better shut down the government. We better do this, we better do that. So all the manner of wackiness and sudden shocks to the system is occurring within the next month. And during the end of this month, the markets should see some light again or some rise again. At least the crypto markets, the gold, the silver, the stock markets, they've been going up. I can't imagine them going further up at this time. It seems like there's a time for them to go down and crypto to go up. So that's what it seems it's moving towards. But yeah, I'm not seeing anything on the streets quite yet, but there's rumors of it. There's rumors of a lot of protests in some areas definitely do because I mean people are depending, they depend on those food stamps, to survive the day to day. So, I don't live in a major city area, so I don't see the on hand. I visit cities, but I don't visit major cities, like a San Francisco or something. Not often, anyways. So there you go. That's what I
Yeah,
got.
no, that's brilliant. That is brilliant. But it is a clear indication it's not helping the financial situation in any way, shape, or form. So
It's
yeah,
not helping our the local people's financial
no,
situation. I
no,
don't know what it's doing for, you know, I don't know what they're doing with it.
no. I
Something.
mean, if they're not spending the money on wages, that money must still kind of be there or not. I don't know. And so where's that gone? Where's it going? Who's having that? I don't know. You know.
Yeah, we'll get back to that in number 8.
Yeah, I think we will because number eight's a real doozy. Right. Fourth one is the BRICS payment system. And it's called CIPS, CIPS. And interestingly, sorry if you hear fireworks. It's in England we how can I put it? We like to set fireworks off a week before November the 5th at least, and at least a week afterwards as well. So
What? Why?
oh
It's
yeah,
so weird.
yeah. It's Guy Fawkes, isn't it? Remember, but and that's another rabbit hole we're not going to go into today. But
So we're not.
yeah.
Remember.
Yeah, but so we've got the payment system SIPS, which is the BRICS payment system. Um, on the side note, China has got its digital system working, so it's countrywide system working, which is called Renminbi, Renminbi or something like that. It's RENMINBI, and so China has got its own digital payment system going, but it's also the BRICS system. So we're going to look at the BRICS system on this, okay? But I am aware that China has its own digital system and has been, using it quite a bit, and it's been very successful. Now, the SIPS system is directly opposite the Western's SWIFT system. We're under the SWIFT system in the UK, US, EU, Australia, Canada, whatever. Okay. Now the BRICS system are now under SIPS, and the two are not comparable. So you cannot use dollars, euros, or pounds, my understanding, in the BRICS payment system. You can only use any other currency apart from the euro, pound, and dollar. Um, could be wrong about the euro and the pound, but certainly the dollar is 100% not able to be used. And if it's not Swift compatible, we use Swift. So there we go. Um, now, the SIPS now supports transactions across 185 individual countries. So that's 185 countries, bar the Western countries, have direct access to the SIPS system, and to be able to trade not using dollars, pounds, or euros, but fundamentally dollars. We're talking here. So they're in those 185 countries could be doing trade between themselves and $0 are being used. That's huge. That's huge. It means the dollar has been sidestepped as being not wanted by these countries. Now, I'm not saying all 185 are using this, they certainly are not, but they have the option to. Um, And obviously, we know that the BRICS SIPS system, if we can remember from previous chats, is backed by 40% gold, silver, other minerals, copper, ores, whatever the country has, oil included. Okay, so it's a mixed bag of stuff that guarantees that whatever happens, 40% of that 100% is backed by something that's tangible, which is a step forward to what we have with the dollar, which is backed by unicorn farts and fresh air.
It's That's a high value on,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Especially those unicorn farts. But you got to be careful they don't blow away into space. Um, Now, 40 nations are currently using the SIPs instead of SWIFT. So there are 40 nations that are actually using SIPs for the majority of their transactions and not SWIFT, and SWIFT is dollars. So that's as of 2025, 40 nations. We have a quote here from the Singapore PM when this came about, and it links in. And the Singaporean PM warned a few weeks ago of a potentially messy transaction or transition, sorry, a messy transition to post USA order. So what we have is countries that can now usurp the dollars, saying that it could get messy. Now, what messy means is up to interpretation, but I would say financially messy, and probably more so for the West than it would be for those countries that can deal in BRICS nation um, goods. So, so yeah. So again, if you have got any thoughts with that one, or do you want to just go on?
You'll just go on the five. That one was more of a reminder of the contrast we have between SIPs and the Swift system.
But it's happening. These are signs. This is the snowball going down the hill, everybody. Oh, nothing's happening. Really? Do you think
I
it?
should mention then that, you mentioned this last time. We have the situation in Venezuela, where Venezuela is wanting to get into the system, it seems. And yet there seems to be some interference over on from their old system who doesn't want to let them go. And so again, we're seeing this is I was mentioning to Gary in our talk prior in geodetic astrology, all the major aspects occurring right now occur over the world map. And I was reminding Gary that in over England and Europe is the Aries vortex, which means a whole reset of their economic system and what they're doing. And over South America and parts of the US is the Pluto line. And the Pluto line is like very similar concept, just in different planetary configurations, but it's the Pluto line. So it's where old inauthentic derivative ways are being destroyed and new economic financial things are being implemented. So we will see a return to this, what we've seen in the past, which has always been the truth, that South American countries are largely run by unstable governments because they're controlled derivatively by other financial systems, foreign financial systems. So we're seeing that with Argentina. We could see that with Venezuela next. We could see it with others.
Yeah, Yeah, very, very, very valid point there. And it makes sense of the Argentina thing as well, with what Maten just said, it, you that's the gift of Maten. I mean, oh my God, everybody needs a Maten in their lives, by the way. Everybody does.
I don't want to duplicate or digital double myself. No.
No, true, true, true. But it's these golden nuggets that make this program slightly different and stand out from everyone else because Maten's able to demonstrate in different ways, in different angles, what's happening and what we can physically see happening. And when you marry the two together, hopefully it gives you, the wider audience, a better perspective on what's really happening. And the more informed you are, the more you understand, the less fear you have over seeing some of these headlines that could be coming out in the next weeks, months, you know. So there we go. So thank you, Maten. That was brilliant, brilliant. Point five, or five already. The pointlessness of tariffs. Now, the USA has been going around threatening tariffs on everybody and has even made some new trade agreements. I would say 90% of the new trade agreements, even though something was signed, have not been ratified and have not happened. And some, like the US EU trade agreement that was done with van der Leyen, and we like to call her Vanda who lies because she really is quite foul. Um, Fundamentally, she tore that agreement up a week or so days after that agreement was agreed with Mr. Trump. So one of the things that we can really look at, and I have figures for this, okay, to demonstrate my bold pointlessness of tariffs, is China. Now, the tariffs and the issues with China have been going on, and obviously we have the chip issue with the EU. But regardless of that, Chinese industry profits, so we're talking about profits here, surged to 21.6% in September. Now, I know that's September, and you can say to me, oh, Gary, we've got a couple of 3 months where it could all drop and it could all go wrong. Okay. But 21.6% profits in September was the biggest increase in almost 2 years. And this is because, in my opinion, from my observation, when Donald Trump threatened India, India, being a BRICS nation who didn't particularly get on very well with China, decided to jump in bed with China, and the two nations have become tighter and tighter and tighter and have fundamentally disregarded the USA and its big stick and carrot approach. And we're now seeing India forging closer links with China than ever before. And I think last week or this week, we saw the first direct air flights from India to China for a long while. So they are now entering into tourism and trading using SIPs, which means no dollars. And these are powerhouses of industry and certainly hold huge amounts of certain materials that we'll go into in a little bit later. Now, during this period also, while Trump was threatening tariffs, there was something called an ASEAN meeting. And I think this was in Thailand or somewhere like that. And ASEAN stands for the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. And it was 10 countries, it's now 11 because they accepted another one into them. So it's now 11 nations. 11 countries, and they have trade agreements, but just not trade agreements, free trade agreements. And it's very likely because China was there and China's not part of their group, but China was fully involved in the ASEAN meeting. And with China being fully involved in that meeting, it's very likely that China was promoting the BRICS part of their nation stuff and the CIPS payment system for these nations to continue to trade tariff free amongst each other, not using dollars. So, you know,
So so we have an example of we're trying to implement new boundaries, with as a mistress, and we're pushing our mistress and our lover into new arms, new mistresses or something, and
well
we're
put. Yeah,
and we have no bridge anymore. So we're just supporting the new binds, the new ties, the new bridges that are like, oh, you wanna play with us? We'll go play in another sandbox. Oh no. Like the bullying is just not working anymore. The old strategy is done. They have to find a new authentic way to deal with this. And you wonder how much of this is intentional because they have their plan, which we'll get to in 8, you know,
yeah,
if we're understanding it at all.
yeah. If we are, yeah, yeah. Sometimes it feels like we have blindfolds on as we're walking through this, but that's a great analogy, Maten. I mean, yeah, you nailed it. Scolding the mistress, and the mistress runs off to somebody else.
It finds a new lover, a new financer. Wow.
Yeah. So the fact that China's got record profits in its industrial sector, just for me shows that China knew this was coming. They're not stupid. That years and years and years ago, the Far East were certainly the whipping boys of the West and were definitely taken advantage of by the West. But the Far East has become sophisticated and they have learnt over many, many years and now produce and control huge, huge things, which is what we're going to come on to next. So I'm going to stop with that. But the game's changed. And has the Westerns games changed? No, it's the same old story. So, number 6, the BRICS nations are reserve rich nations and industrially powerful. So, you've scolded the mistress and she's run off to a bloke who isn't just another lover. He's built like a brick shit house, goes to the gym all the time, and he's got loads of money and he's got loads of natural wealth. Didn't you do a good job? And this is now what we're seeing. Okay. The BRICS nations are not following the green agenda. They're not hampering themselves by not purchasing cheap oil and gas reserves from country R. They're not building coal powered stations and using their natural resources to create cheap energy to produce and continue to push forward their industrial march. In the UK alone, we produce less oil this year than we ever have, but we purchased the majority of our oil at a higher price than we can produce it from Norway, so we could offset our carbon footprint. The Norwegian gas and oil fields are exactly the same as the British gas and oil fields. They're rigs sit next to each other in the North Sea. And yet here we are tying our own hands behind our backs, playing a game where we're deliberately disadvantaging ourselves. Okay. Now, when we look at the cargo ship that the Dutch imported, or sorry, not imported, seized on the chips, that was fundamentally tying their hands behind their own backs again. And we continue to see this policy of the mono government of the West continuously taking down the Western nations and trying to create a third world society. Now, a little piece of figures, because we do like figures. For an example of this, what I'm just talking about. So the entire G7 nations growth output for the coming 2 years, I think it was, is 19%. The top, I think, seven BRICS nations, but if you took, whether this is true or not, but let's just call it the BRICS nations. The top BRICS nations, their projected growth over the next 2 years is 35%. And I think that gap's only going to get bigger. And the prediction going into 2030 was it's 3D to 5D, everybody. It's that split, you know, and it's a chasm that is getting to the stage where it cannot be stopped. It's becoming too large, and you know the fact that this gap is being projected to increase further as we go forward is really not good news for Western nations in any way, shape, or form. So I don't know if you've got anything to say about that, Maten, or we'll just go on to number seven, which
You
is
gave me a great title for our episode.
did I
Yeah, you did. I think you got it. I won't say
really?
anything yet. We'll talk about it after.
Superb. Nice. Because I didn't have a title. So there we go. You saw it here first live. Number seven is my old favorite and what is essentially only real money, although I would actually say that there is actually no such thing as money, and all of it's a 3D concept of control and the master slave conundrum, which Miten and Tula did a very good video on the other day. So do check that out. Very interesting. Very interesting. But we're going to talk about gold and silver. And Miten spoke about this briefly previously about the fact that gold and silver seems to have plateaued off. Now, this isn't a natural plateau off. This is full price manipulation. This is corruption on an industrial stage, and this is as dark and dodgy as it gets from our banking cartels, fundamentally. Okay. Now, I'm going to use silver as an example. Silver was going and now it's completely dropped. The fact that we virtually have no silver, and at one point last week, or was it the week before, India couldn't sell any silver to its people. The biggest region in China, which is a Sichuan, something like that, which controls a quarter of all the gold reserves in China, stopped supplying silver. And the fact that London seemed to run out and that the Royal Mint has no more silver to mint into coinage. And I think the American Mint is exactly the same. So we've got a very, very, very low stock of silver, which in any true capitalist society would mean the price would go up and the ratio would go back to or start to go back to how has been for 3,000 years previously, which is 15 to 1 to gold. And we're still at 80 something to 1 in gold. So, in one day, approximately 1 billion paper silver ounces were traded. So, in one day, 1 billion ounces of paper, not real silver, paper promises, were traded to suppress the price of silver in one day. Now, when we start to look at this in terms that we can understand, there are only 800 million ounces of silver mined in a year. 1 billion ounces. So you know, 1.2% more silver that's mined in an entire year was traded in one day to crash the silver price. And those banks doing so would have been BlackRock, JP Morgan, HSBC, Citibank, and such like. And when we look at BlackRock, particularly with our favourite Larry Fink, who's now the WEF chairman, I think we can see where we're going with that one, and I'm not going to go any further. But silver is a rare and depleting in physical availability product. China has just recently restricted silver exports. So China is the biggest refiner of silver in the world, and they're restricting the amount of silver that now leaves China. China exports 0% in gold. No gold is ever exported out of China. And I think China is one of the biggest producers of gold, got the biggest gold mines, some of the biggest gold mines in the world in China, and zero gold leaves China. Now, to put some perspective on the purchasing that's been going on gold via official narratives, in the first 3 quarters of 2025, China purchased 591 tons of gold. India, in the first 3 quarters of 2025, purchased 462 tons of gold. The US purchased and imported 109 tons of gold. Just 109.
What was the number for China? Sorry.
China was 591 tons.
Okay.
Now, it has been suggested for a long time that China holds far more gold than they have let on, perhaps 10 times more gold. And why is that important? Because when we get the revaluation, when the money collapses, if gold gets revalued, whoever holds the most gold controls the markets and takes control of the world. Now, there was a program very recently, and the upshot of that was that this gentleman worked out that China probably has, due to its zero export policy on gold, 38,000 tons of gold. That's 38,000 tons of gold. The USA holds 8,134 tons.
You said the USA holds 100.
Eight thousand,
30,000.
8,134 tons.
Got it.
Allegedly, because
Right.
because there still hasn't been an audit done, and no one actually really knows how much gold America holds. Because there's very, very strong rumours that Fort Knox was emptied, the gold sent over to London, where gold could be resold hundreds of times over per bar, as in America you can only sell the same bar 3 times. We're talking paper gold now. And China and other countries purchased the gold and then got delivery of said gold. And that gold is currently being worn around the necks of Indian and Chinese housewives, Thai housewives, Vietnamese housewives. So, however much America really holds or doesn't hold, I don't know. But I think we're playing a game of poker here. And China holds 4 aces. And I don't know what the hell America's holding in its hand because, do they have a royal flush or do they have nothing? I suspect they hold nothing in their hand.
We'll determine that by our assessments of number 8.
Another point on this is the price suppression of gold and silver has allowed the purchasing in huge volumes of gold and silver into India, Russia, and all the other BRICS nations and anybody else who wanted to purchase it. So the suppression of the real money to maintain the fiat currency's value has been seen as a gift horse, and you never look one of those in the mouth. And so that's why we see China's 591 tons of purchased gold so far this year, and India's 462 tons of gold this year, compared to the USA's 109 tons of purchases. And were those purchases 109 tons actually purchases, or was that gold that they already owned that just came back? I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know that.
We don't know. You know,
What we do know is that it's been a great buy for them. And and so if number 8 is such, then why? Why would it be such? How does that make sense?
the last point of 7 that I will make is the USA declared silver a critical mineral recently. That means the USA government has now recognized that if they don't hold stocks of silver, the American industry stops. Finished. The federal shutdown means that no work has been done on this. And in the meantime, silver drains away. Physical silver has been drained away by India, China, and everybody else. While America sits with the department shut behind the game yet again. Something that's also been happening is when silver is mined, it's often a byproduct. So all the easy silver that can be mined has already been mined. And silver sits on the upper layers of the earth. So it's relatively easy to mine and was. Now, in our favourite countries in South America, they have mines that mine all sorts of different materials, and silver is a byproduct. And the byproduct before it's refined is called a doré bar. And a doré bar could be 50% silver and 50% bits and pieces, non-silver. And these rough bars don't count when you send them from country to country. The only silver that's counted is the 99% 100% pure silver, the refined stuff. So what has China been doing? China has gone into every single mine in South America, offered them double the price on doré bars, and had them shipped to China. And remember, China is the biggest refiners of silver in the world, and that has gone unreported. So, out of the 800 million ounces of silver that's mined every year, no one has a clue how much in the last year or so China has scoffed away to themselves because it's unreported and it's not, no one keeps a record of it. So, something that is a critical mineral to a country's manufacturing and wealth has just been let drain away. I got nothing more to say on that one, you know.
Wow. They must have found some new mineral that no one knows about yet, surprise mineral that's gonna come out next year and everyone's gonna be shocked and in the streets and happy and
I've
well
just
be able
worked
to
out
buy
what
it cheap.
I've just worked out what it is.
Which one is it?
Unicorn farts.
They're gonna crystallize it into gem quality material or like stone quality material, and it will each hold. Oh my goodness. Now you got me thinking of gems. Because it's not just I wonder how that market goes because what's really interesting, this is just a sideways, but this is really interesting because I'm involved with this market, is consider what you said about a lot of this gold, right, being worn on the necks of citizens, especially in India, China. So consider jewelry itself. There's going to also be a huge issue with jewelry and jewelers because how are they going to afford to purchase the silver and the gold to meld into the forms of rings and pendants and bracelets? You know what I mean? So and it's already occurring. I'm already seeing this. And so this is it's just very interesting. And, and not just that, but the fact that gems, a certain form of minerals there's not just gold and silver, there's others, right? There's copper, there's palladium, right? I mean, those are other metals, but then there's gems, there's rubies, there's emeralds, there's, all which also comprise uh, a symbolic representation of the planetary rays and frequencies, which have value. And so I haven't even thought of this till this moment of how they may increase in value as gold and silver increase in value. So that's interesting.
That
But
is, isn't it? It's
yeah, are we
knock-on
ready to go?
effect.
Yeah. Are we ready to go to 8? Forgive my
We
Aries
are,
Smith.
we are, we are. Just one little thing on silver, just as I remember it. The UK trade 600 million ounces generally of silver every day or every week, something like that. The available float of silver held in the United Kingdom vaults is 140 million ounces. So they're trading 600 million ounces a day, fundamentally, a day, when they only hold in total 140 million ounces.
How much are they trading a day?
600 million ounces.
Got it. So more than double.
Yeah, triple actually, almost triple. I can't even say it. Move the teeth.
Triple.
Triple. That's the word. Yeah. So it just goes as you say. I hadn't really considered the jewelry industry and moving forward on that, but
They
how
can't.
much is
They can't.
you know
They can't even purchase right now. The prices are astronomical. How can they purchase more silver and gold to put into jewelry? Who's going to buy? Unless you know what I mean? They already have the buyer.
yeah,
That's a big issue.
yeah, they're going to literally have to make it to order once the deposit's been paid to cover the cost of the gold or the silver price, and then pay for the whatever goes in it and the workman's time.
So that's another form of investment I just suggest for others is buying old jewelry,
Yeah.
with their gold and silver. But even if it has already crystals and gems on it that you like or don't like, you could always have them taken out and new ones put in. Um, but there's great value in purchasing old jewelry.
Yeah. Without doubt. Very, and obviously this is not financial advice. None of this is financial advice.
No, that was
But
not
but
financial
that's
advice at all.
very prudent. And also, if you have a partner and you purchase something like that for them, you'll also be in the goodie books. I wonder how big a necklace America would have to buy for India to bring them back again, or do you think it's gone past that stage?
It's, it's too late. I think they're satisfied with their new, you know, being the new mistress to some other.
Now, number eight is going to be the one. Um, so we've been demonstrating kind of the snowball effect and what's going on and things that are going on in the background that no one's really seeing, and we're putting it together. Okay. What we're now going to be looking at is the skullduggery and the sneakiness in which potentially the US is going to continue with the dollar and the use of the dollar. I'm not sure how long it will last. This is quite complex, and it took me and Maten quite some time discussing it for me to be able to express to Maten in a way he understood, to then paraphrase it back to me far better than I had been doing for the entire talk. So here it goes. For America to furnish its debt, to continue its debt, borrowing, spending costs. I mean, I think it's what, 37 trillion or 38 trillion now, something stupid like that, isn't it? Um,
Yeah, it's kind of the exact same number as purchases of gold. There was some real weird parallel that we just came upon. I was going to double check that, but go ahead.
so the US has debt bonds that it's now finding increasingly difficult to sell around the world because those debt bonds have been weaponized by the European Union to benefit country U against country R. And third party counterparty risk of not holding an asset in your hand or being a country and not having gold physically in a vault that you can access that's yours is now becoming quite paramount. We're now seeing places like the Cayman Islands being one of the biggest derivative market holders of American debt. The other really big one that we're seeing, and by derivative market, what I mean is um, if you had a pound, you could borrow £1,000 off that pound, and with that £1,000, you could borrow debt bonds. And once you've got £1,000 worth of debt bonds, you can then borrow £1 million worth of debt bonds from the £1,000 that you use as collateral from the original pound. And then from that million, you can then borrow more again and more again and more again. And fundamentally, I think it was the market sniper worked this out that for £250,000, you could have £6.8 million worth of debt bonds, American debt bonds. So it's astronomical. And I could be wrong there because it could actually be 6.8 billion on £250,000. I mean, and we're talking stupid figures. So the American debt is being purchased by its own self, and I think other countries have now got wise to this and realised that the American dollar is actually worthless. And we know it's lost 99% of its purchasing power since its inception, I think in 1971 when it came off the gold standard. Now, the American government is in deep poo-poo because no one wants their debt bonds, and the debt bonds that are being held by people like the Cayman Islands, or even the UK. The UK holds an awful lot of American debt bonds, but it has been suggested that the purchase or the money that came to purchase those debt bonds came from the Fed. And so the Fed gave the UK the money so the UK could then purchase the debt bonds to make it look like the market is healthy. You know, market manipulation continues at a pace. The inverted pyramid. Now, none of this is backed by real money, gold, and it's all one big Ponzi scheme. It's a pyramid scheme, inverted pyramid scheme. Now, in comes the knight in shining armor, crypto to the rescue, or stable coins. Now, I know I know there's going to be people out there who are into their crypto go, stable coins aren't this, and Bitcoin isn't a coin, and this isn't that, and this isn't that. I kind of understand that, but for the benefit of what we're trying to talk about, because it's very complex, crypto, Tether, and stable coins are all crypto. Um, just to make it easier for us to be able to express what's going to be going on. Okay, so when we talk about stablecoin or Tether, I'm talking about cryptocurrency. And if we're talking about Bitcoin, even though it's not technically a cryptocurrency, it's a cryptocurrency in the terms in which we're trying to express what's going on. Now, the USA has got lots of debt and lots of dollars slashing around because countries like China have returned their debt bonds and no longer buying debt bonds from America fundamentally because they don't need to, because they don't need the dollars anymore, because they've got their own system and they're going their own way, and they're also gold backed, and we'll get into that a bit more in a minute. So America has a currency flow problem. Now, currency is the current of the sea, which is the flow of money, the movement of money. And if money sits there too long, it becomes stale and stagnant and causes problems. Remember, when we're talking about money, we're talking about Admiralty law, and the bank is the river bank. Liquid assets, liquid is the river that or the sea that the ship would go on. And so we are linked into this Admiralty language in the way that money's used. So America needs to get its money to flow, and America needs, this is the government, America, not the people, the government needs to diversify out of debt bonds, but still using the debt bond system to enable them to funnel money around to fulfill their debt obligations with almost physical money. So if you can imagine that a debt bond is created money out of fresh air that the government promises to pay an interest rate to whoever holds it when it matures. But the money is created, that debt bond is created out of fresh air fundamentally, because it's not real money, it's debt. And so what appears to be happening, and Tether, I believe, was the first dry run of this, is Tether started to purchase American debt bonds. And they were at one point the third biggest purchaser of American debt bonds. And those who ran Tether were given, and Tether is connected to Bitcoin. It's all part of the blockchain system. And obviously, the debt bonds that Tether purchased would have gone into and partly funded Bitcoins as well, all linked. But those who controlled Tether were given a little bit of a bonus for doing this trial on the American debt bonds and holding these American debt bonds. Remember, the crypto is created out of fresh air again. So the American government has created debt or dollars out of fresh air. Tether, which is backed by nothing but fresh air, has purchased these bonds to give itself some legitimacy within the eyes of the establishment to then spread that around the crypto community as as tether coins, as other stable coins. But what they won't tell you is that in Zurich, Tether holds $6 billion worth of gold. So in effect, Tether that was created out of fresh air, that has been buying fresh air and transferring fresh air, was given real money as the bonus for the trial to see how American dollars could flow in to the crypto market. Does that make sense so far, Maten, the way I'm describing it?
Yes, very much so.
Now, stable coins are created out of fresh air, and this was proven last week or the week before by Paxos. And Paxos is stable coin, I believe. I could be wrong here. I've not looked into it enough. I was only looking, trying to understand the principle of what they did. And Paxos burned in a trial, so they say, 300 trillion PY US dollars in stable coins, just like that, in the Stellar network, I believe that was. Now, I could be wrong in the way I'm doing it. As far as I'm concerned, it's all crypto. It's all stable coins. It's all made up. It's all another fiat Ponzi scheme, a bubble on top of a bubble of nothing to try and move money around the system to give the government legitimacy and the currency legitimacy on actually being a real thing when it's not. So, this is very interesting what I've just said, but really has no bones about it. Until you understand that Visa and MasterCard are now linked into the Stellar crypto and whoever else, but they're both linked into crypto. And I should imagine many banks are now starting to do this as well, or will start to do this. So your debit cards, or let's stick to credit cards, it's easier. So your credit card is now being linked to crypto coins, and the crypto coins are American debt. So every time you use your MasterCard to make a purchase, you're actually making that purchase in crypto coins, stable coins, stellar coins, whatever it is, which is actually American debt. But you don't pay Visa or MasterCard back in crypto. You can, obviously, but the majority of Americans have to pay with dollars they've earned from their job. And so they are laundering the American debt into real dollars again because you have to pay or transfer your credits from your bank account that you've earned from your wages to pay off your credit card bill. And so they're creating a current, a flow of money, of created money and they're turning it into real dollars, which can be recycled back to the banks. And in effect, they're money creating without turning on the printing press. Because if the Federal Reserve turns on the printing press and starts printing lots of money, it will become very obvious that the American dollar is about to collapse. But if they do it via debt that already is in the system, connecting it and linking it to crypto coins, in effect, they are printing money, creating money, government money out fresh air in a very subtle way, which is no different to them printing the physical and putting it out into the system. It's a Ponzi scheme to control the American debt and to make sure that dollars are needed in every single transaction done by a Visa card or a MasterCard. Because don't forget, the BRICS nations don't need to use dollars and don't use dollars anymore. And so all that money that would have been, all those transactions that would have happened within those BRICS nations no longer does. Meten, did that make sense? And would you like to paraphrase what I've tried to say and express so that if it's said in a different way, it might make more sense?
Yes. So what I understood is that I was taking some notes. Okay, so what I understood is that because no other countries, because countries have woken up and realized, hey, we're not going to buy these debt bonds anymore from the United States. It's just we're just supporting the derivative system, and we're not, and we're continuing to link ourselves through debt to the financial system of the United States, and we're controlled by them by doing this. We're controlled by their economic financial system. So now that many of the countries have woken up to that and they're starting their own systems like BRICS, using its own systems instead of the SWIFT system, America has turned to its own citizens to purchase the debt bonds. And so now we're purchasing those debt bonds through our hard-earned money, and we're paying for it through into the SWIFT digital system. And it looks like both sides have money, but at some point, in order to do the conversion, the full laundering that they want to do, laundering of it, in order to erase their debt, if that is their intent, and I guess where I'm already arriving at this, I'm going too far, I think. No, so yeah, so that's it. Yes, I understand. By already using digital systems and Swift and credit cards and crypto, we're already putting our dollars into buying all that debt. We're already doing it. And so now they have this giant bubble of our money, and they don't have to print more money because they have that value that they can reinvest in gold, silver, or in crypto, and then take it out of crypto once they bring it up to buy gold and silver, and then they drop it and we lose money, and then they bring it up and they buy more gold and silver and then drop it and then we lose money. At some point, well, are we going into eight? Tell me, are we in eight already or not? Am
Yeah,
I
we're in
confused?
eight. Yeah, we're fully
Okay,
in
then I'll
eight.
do
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Yeah, so
So,
you go there, go there.
okay, so it looks, this is, I made some notes, so let me make sure I'm real clear with how I share this, and then you can share back to see if you're understanding and add to it, because there's some questions I've added. So how it's understood now is the US has 37 trillion in debt, and the alleged value of gold in the United States is 11 billion. Now, it will be revalued for the current price, I think, because I don't think it's fully revalued. It would be 37 billion. Now, if if indeed what we presuppose has to occur, and Gary's been talking about this for months. So this is Gary's been building up to this. So I'm just like, you know what I mean? Finally catching up and observing it in action and seeing how it's being put into action. Because we've all been hearing this with, the new laws they're passing for crypto, especially in the United States, and how they're acting on this now. So it's all coming about. And so what it is it seems in order to fully launder the money that we're buying with these debt bonds, that they're going to have to revalue gold in order to clear the debt. Now that means both silver and gold will be revalued. Now the new prices that would be revalued at are for gold currently at, what is it, around, I haven't checked, around 4,000, something like that.
Yeah, it's
So
probably
a reevaluation and a part of the process of moving debt into the digital system is going to have to be reevaluating gold at a higher price. And so that would be gold at $124,000 an ounce. And again, this is just currently using our current, value system, which is money, which is dollars. Now, that means that Bitcoin would also obviously reevaluate and also move up. And so that would be Bitcoin at, and this is from another market analyst. I'm just taking notes from his breakdown of the currency, and I'll note his video in the notes. He said that Bitcoin would be revalued at 175 million, and that would be a Bitcoin, if I'm understanding that correctly. And stable coins don't go up or down in value. They just keep a value because they're just holders. And so this means that both crypto and gold will shoot up. And this is scary because this means that those who are holding crypto okay, let me add in silver. So Gary has talked about on his channel over and over again how the historical parallel of the prices of silver and gold is 15 to 1. And that's not what it is now, obviously. Silver's price having been controlled for so long is much lower. But if it did reach that 15 to 1, then silver would be around $12,400 an ounce. And this, I don't know how jewelry would continue to be created, with such, we would just be using the jewelry we have. And if this were to happen and they were to convert utilizing our money, which is being put into the digital systems, and we have to include crypto as a part of this digital system, then as we move all our money and they now and buy their debt bonds, and now they have all this purchasing power from our money to purchase more gold and more crypto in order to continue to build and crash the systems, then at some point the derivative system of cryptocurrency itself would have to be also. In other words, the Ponzi game would be up at some point. What do you think of this, Gary?
yeah, yeah. So fundamentally, what I was trying to find was the actual gold price in the USA, because actually the gold held by the US government is not £4,000 an ounce. It's something like £43 an ounce and 22 cents, something like that. And I can't
That's where
actually
the
find.
37 billion came.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I can't actually find the price on Google because it won't show me that price. Strange how Google wants to hide the price of the valuation of the gold that's held by the US government. So if they revalue gold, they will give themselves lots and lots of extra money. But if they go to the extreme that that analyst is saying, it will fundamentally collapse the entire markets. And it will also make countries like China and India, the East, super rich overnight. So
Yes, that was the extra step, right? We were looking at.
so I don't think they're going to revalue it to that price. But I do think they need to revalue it to a level where they can get the debt bonds that are held by external countries back, because then you're not going to put crypto or Bitcoin through the roof. And so, say they put it to, and I'm just going to use a figure here now, to $25,000 an ounce. That would give them enough money to buy all their debt bonds from every single country around the world and bring their debt back into the USA. They'd still owe, you know, 30, whatever it is, trillion or, in debt, but they wouldn't owe it externally to different countries. And if they control the crypto market that they've just put all their debt bonds into, by valuing the gold up and putting Bitcoin up through the roof, what they would do before they did that is they would purchase the debt into Bitcoin. They would revalue. Bitcoin would go through the roof. So taking away, or they would do it afterwards, so they could take away and purchase all their debt in Bitcoin, and then they'd crash Bitcoin and they'd wipe out their debt in the crypto markets, and everybody that held crypto, particularly Bitcoin, would get burnt because it would be worthless, because they would crash it and they would then destroy their debt overnight. And they would still hold the reserves of the physical gold in their reserves that are worth 2.5, 3 trillion, 4 trillion, whatever it would be. And that would give a boost to all the other countries, but it wouldn't put them out of sight. That's the way I see it. So I think what Miten said, if you bring the numbers down to a more realistic way, that's how they will use the stable coin to, they will use the crypto market, they'll create a bubble. The bubble will hold the American debt, the bubble will collapse and crash, and the debt goes with it. So the fictional debt that's held by the fictional stable coin would be popped with the pin, and both would go out like fairy dust, and there'd be no debt left. They wouldn't owe debt to any other country, and they would be scot clear to continue doing whatever they wanted to do fundamentally. But because China holds so much gold, it would then put China as the leading power financially of the world. And does America want to do that?
No, that's why it seems on some level that they don't want to reevaluate gold that high. That they're going to continue most likely to just level it up,
Yeah.
and use crypto as the main means of, as you said, creating the bubble to hold the debt and collapse it. But I don't see how they can do that without gold. You know what I mean? They're going to have to like totally manipulate the silver gold markets in order to prevent gold and silver from shooting up during such a time.
Yeah. And they have been, but once you revalue, it's once the American government, say, easy numbers, if the American government revalued gold at $5,000 tomorrow, gold would never drop below that level ever again. That would be the benchmark base level. And gold in the retail, not in the federal wise, could go up to seven, eight, nine, $10,000 an ounce. Now, we had something that happened again. You know me, I love my history. After the war, and it's that good old psychopath Winston Churchill again, my favourite friend. Winston Churchill did a revaluation of the gold to try, and I don't think he tried to do anything other than crash the system, which is exactly what he did for his masters. Because you have to remember, Winston Churchill was a sick Zionist. And his relatives go all the way back to the inception of the Bank of England, in fact. and his direct relative was the first Duke of Marlborough, who was getting paid £6,000 a year in 1694 by the Zionist Jews in Holland. Anyway, I digress. Winston Churchill was the Chancellor of the Exchequer. He revalued gold at too low a level in the UK, and it didn't wipe out the debt. And because of soaring inflation and everything else like that, the UK still went into a crippling recession and major problems. So there is historical um, tones of a fairly recent gold revaluation of a country, the UK, and ultimately that's when the UK came off the sterling silver, because the UK and silver sterling was the reserve currency of the world, and it was the Briggs Stratton um, that gave America the gold reserve and the reserve currency of the world in 19 whenever it was 40 something, that carried on until 1971 when Nixon took it off the gold reserve, gold backed currency. So we have a lot of skullduggery. And obviously, when you understand that the Federal Reserve is controlled by the Zionists, same group of people, and Winston Churchill was working for the Zionists, you can see why Churchill crashed and didn't revalue the gold at a high enough level in the UK to enable his masters to be given control of the world's currency and to take it into the USA. But there we go, you know. So it's very, very, very interesting times in the respect of how they're going to do it and what they're going to do. For those who are into their research, please research the gold revaluation and how it affected the UK and and what came from that. Now, there is another fairly big fly in the ointment, unfortunately, for the USA in this one. And we've got to go back to China again. Now, China has backed its digital yuan 100% by gold. And China is building vaults. Hong Kong, it's got one now already, I think, which is in operation. Shanghai and Saudi Arabia. And what that means is, by say 100% backed by gold, is that if China buys oil from Saudi Arabia in yuan digitally, pays for the gold, Saudi Arabia can trot down to the Chinese bullion exchange, the bank they've just built, transfer their digital yuan straight into that bank, and will be given physical gold 1 to 1. Something America can't do. And that's before you've even revalued, because we've spoken about how much more gold China has compared to America. America is no longer in the driving seat. And in the Western world, we're being fed a complete pile of excrement over all of this. We really are. Any nation that can afford to digitally back their currency 1 to 1 on big international trades like oil with Saudi Arabia and pay for that oil in solid physical gold because their digital yuan is as good as gold, changes the game completely again. And it's not being reported. And this is this snowball. The snowball's not snowball anymore. It's not. It's a great big avalanche that's heading down towards America, and they're playing around with blooming crypto to try and deflect what's going on, while China's got real money, real gold, and is using it in a tangible way. Now, This is we are now going to some real interesting points that many will not know about, and this is real key. I've got two major things now that are game changers, and this is the beginning of the end of the City of London and the London Bullion Metals Exchange and the COMEX in New York. This is the beginning of the end. Cambodia is the first nation to vault its gold in China. Cambodia no longer trusts the West to hold its gold and is transferring and has transferred its gold, and all new future gold will go into China to be held in Chinese vaults, probably Hong Kong. That's a world first. We also have a first where Indonesia has purchased yuan based bonds from China and has purchased $842 million worth of yuan bonds, which will fundamentally be backed by gold 1 to 1, as we've just discussed. They have chosen not to buy American debt bonds or anybody else's debt bonds, but Chinese bonds, because the yuan is backed by gold. And they've just purchased $842 million worth in yuan. These are seismic changes where we're seeing BRICS nations and the Asia trade one. What were they called again? I do apologize, it's gone out of my head. It's the, who was it? ASEAN, the ASEAN Association, the ASEAN Association, free trade. These countries are now turning their back on the American Central Reserve dollar and going to China because China is safer than America with people's money. And whoever thought somebody would be sat there saying that? And I wonder how many people I triggered saying that, by the way. But it's a fact. We also have another example of the lack of trust in the bullion banks of the United Kingdom, where the Reserve Bank of India has just brought back 64 tons of gold from London Bank of England. So India has just repatriated 64 tons of gold from London back to themselves. Now, I wonder if India will carry on holding that or whether they will, like Indonesia, place that in a Chinese vault at some point, because that then gives them their gold reserve backing on their BRICS nations purchases. And there's no third party counterparty risk of a Western nation stealing their gold. There we go.
You're drawing the lines sharper and sharper. We're seeing the lines between worlds be more clear as we move towards the Aries vortex. And it looks like these battle lines that are being drawn are between derivative markets and real markets, between, we could say, the Fibonacci sequence, which represents an Ouroboros with no real life source, a death system, a system based on derivatives, versus a system that is more crystal code based, more lotus of life based on real gold, which is the life force of the sun. It seems like a battle between these two systems, And as we draw the line, both sides have power because America controls the derivative markets of most of the world right now. And that's starting to peel away. But it still has cards in its hand because these derivative systems are how they manipulate and launder money, and no one's stopping that. So in a way, there's more power there. I mean, to create a system that China is doing where you're equating your yuan, your digital yuan with gold, is an seemingly an honest system. And they'll just stand by that system. But what the US is doing, or seems to be doing, or will do with its playing around with creating value wherever it decides to launder its money is, I mean, it's something that manipulates and continues to manipulate. And the outcome of this is not easily seen. But I'll say that astrology portends some interesting exposés of this in the sense that the Aries vortex, as I've been saying ad infinitum, will be seeming to begin its culmination period once Saturn and Neptune return to the early degrees, the pivotal beginning degrees of Aries next February and March. And and as the years progress, I mean, Trump will be around till what is it, January 2029, when his time will complete. And when was the last huge stock market bust? It was 1929. So we have a 29 year right before the huge 2030 marker that they've created, that the elites have created with their conception of everything done by 2030, everything complete. You know, their plan and plot for that. So it just looks like we're watching this continual battle unfold. And yeah, that's what it is. Anything else you have to, I mean, you said so much there, but you were more towards the end, you were showing evidence for the battle lines being drawn, you know, and for a clear contrast between derivative markets and real value. Ponzi schemes and real value versus real value.
Yeah.
This could be also um, re-expressed in many layers of analogies and metaphors because it's also like what I brought up before, the whole map and the territory. You know, which has more value, the map or the territory?
Yeah.
None of us even really. Oh, I'll just give a quick example. So right now in the world, as we see it, as we seem to see parts of it, because we don't live on in parachutes or you know in the sky, so that we can perceive all the earth is as equating to the map that we're given of it. So is the map the territory? No. Is the map given more value than the territory? In a way, derivative markets would make us think so. And even a philosophical view on what it is to live in this realm, to live in this reality, would also say so. Because a map is the territory that constructs how you can get to A to B, how you can get to this place or that place. But how about the realization, and this just kind of reignites this duality, this contrast, this dichotomy, this polarity, is that the maps that we have of the earth don't match the territory,
No, they don't.
and our derivative systems don't match true value. So what kind of place is this? It's the place that it is, but what's the map of it? What are we being told it is? We're given the map, but the territory is something else. So very fascinating kind of ideas can come from this. But I'll muse no more. I'll leave it at that. And if you want to add anything else, Gary.
No, no, we've gone through a lot of concepts there, and some of them are very difficult to grasp. And I've tried to express it in the most simple terms I can. You know, You can do smoke and mirrors with crypto on debt, playing around with revaluing things, not printing more money, but creating more money out of fresh air, smoke and mirrors, look over here, don't look over here. Or you can do what would be real, true money, something that's always been money, which is gold with potentially a bit of silver. But you can take a real tangible something that can be held in your hand and create a legacy with that, or you can keep on deceiving with your legacy. But ultimately, one will come out on top of the other until the other one realizes, or the people realize, that they've been played and the emperor has no clothes. Because one emperor appears to have clothes and one doesn't. And it's up to you watching this to decide which way you think that is and do some more research or not, you know. But when we understand the only real true money in this realm is gold, silver, platinum, palladium, copper, tangible things potentially, you know, but gold and silver have always been money, you know. Wouldn't it be better to hold that in your hand and have a promise of something from a government that clearly don't have your best interests at heart?
All right, I think that's it. Thanks so much, Gary. You just
Yep.
broke down so much and then so clearly. It was brilliant.
And again, please join us for our forecast video, which will come out in a day or so after this one, where Maten and I will be looking at the forecast of what we see coming on. It will not be half as long as this one because we've gone through the nuts and the bolts in this one, so we can be quite clear on our forecast one, and we can go through what we see, or Maten can, and we can try and look at what, from what we've gathered from this video, what could be, you know. And perhaps with this video and you watching that one, it'll give you ideas on where you think it's going, and give you more room for the comments of things that we may have missed. So, with that, Maten, thank you very much, and we'll catch up with everybody very soon. Thank you very much. Love, light, and blessings, everyone. Bye bye.